Our third step in the 10-step problem-solving methodology is hypothesis prioritization and storyline. This is one of the most powerful tricks in the bags of McKinsey, Bain, and BCG consultants. And here it is so important that I'm going to break down hypothesis prioritization and storyline, talk about them separately. What is prioritization? Well, it's about ordering factors or actions per level of importance. Why do we do it? There are infinite factors, but they never have the same weight. So in consulting, we say, don't boil the ocean if you just want a cup of warm water, right? We have limited time and energy, so there's scarcity and we need to focus. How do we prioritize? Well, ideally using explicit criteria and evaluating without bias. I can't stress this enough. A lot of times we prioritize things without consistent criteria, and we have biases in our thinking that end up leading to the non-optimal solution. When someone says I prioritize based on experience, this just means that someone was lazy to really think about it and articulate clearly the criteria they are using to others, right? There's always some criteria. They may be implicit, but they should be made explicit. When we prioritize, here in this particular step, we're talking about root cause hypothesis, so the most likely causes, right, that can be happening, so that we can investigate that further. There are also initiative hypotheses, which are the likely solutions, right? And that's where we use top-down estimations in consulting to find out the potential impact. I can't talk about prioritization without mentioning the Pareto or the 80-20, right? One of the most famous concepts that we use in consulting. You've certainly heard about it. 20% of the factors correspond to 80% of the total variable, whatever that you're measuring, right, that you're studying. And those numbers, is very important to mention that those numbers do not need to be 80 or 20, right? The Pareto is just an idea. Sometimes the numbers are 70-10 or 80-10, right? In this part of the methodology of the 10 steps, we're talking still about the diagnosis, right? The first 5 steps. So prioritization here is about the root cause hypothesis, right? What are the most likely to be among the real causes of the problem, and focus on those to prove that this is causing the problem. We also have initiative hypotheses later on in the rest of the steps, which are the most likely to be successful solutions. And here we can use the famous top-down impact estimations that consultants love to guess what is going to be approximately the impact of that before they explore fully. I couldn't talk about prioritization today without mentioning the Pareto or the 80-20, one of the most pervasive principles about prioritization. You've certainly heard about it. 20% of the factors correspond to 80% of the total of whatever variable that you're studying. Those numbers do not need to be 80 or 20, right? And they don't need to add up to 100, like some people think. You can be talking about 70-20. So 20% of the factors correspond to 70%, or 10% correspond to 80%, or any combination of those, but always in a big concentration of factors, right? So this idea that they have to add up to 100 is so pervasive, actually, that even talking to ChatGPT, you can see here that it kind of confuses that, right? But it's not necessarily because you're adding 2 different variables, right? So you're adding up different things, and you cannot do that, right? Now to the example of my sister in architecture expanding the market for interior design. We had the structure. Now we prioritize areas for investigation. Because of her knowledge of the market, talking to clients and so on, she had hunches, has stronger hunches than I do, what could be the main causes of the lack of demand by lower income families for interior design services. But this was her interpretation based on the frequency of causes that she has heard from the clients. If we want to have a explicit, very, very structured way of prioritizing, then we need to go step by step. Have the problem definition in mind, define the dimensions or criteria for the prioritization, rate the hypothesis according to the dimensions, and focus on the core quadrants, right? You can talk about here, for instance, root cause hypothesis, the likelihood to be causing the problem versus the effort needed to confirm or reject that particular hypothesis. And then you have like, okay, low effort, high likelihood. Let's start with that one. And if it proves to be the cause, then we can scrape the rest. Okay, for consultants love matrices 2x2. You can use them to show your prioritization. Just remember that the best quadrant by convention is the top right one. Okay. And there are other ways to prioritize, other dimensions you can use, right? So if you're prioritizing initiatives, you can use the impact on one of the axes and the investment on the other one. You can talk about urgency. You can talk about fit with the values and the mission, or the strategic alignment with the project or the company, and the fit with capabilities as well, right? So there are several criteria. If you have more than two, then I recommend you to use just a table and rate the hypotheses or initiatives according to those dimensions. Now let's talk about the storyline as well as ghost slides and work plan. This is such a consulting specialty, really. It's very hard to find people that master this outside consulting, and it's extremely effective and fun to do once you know how to, and you can practice a little bit more. Those things, they help us avoid something that is known in McKinsey as APK, the anxious parade of knowledge, which is a nervous presentation of very detailed results that never come together as a real story, right? It's just a bunch of facts that don't lead to any story, and this is definitely not the way to present or to go. What is this pack of storyline, ghost slides, and work plans? Well, storyline is writing your final presentation thread, almost like your executive summary up front, right? Second, the ghost slides are creating pages, templates that you want to fill in with specific detail, and the work plan is listing all the key analysis data required and responsible people for them. Why do you need those things? Well, you need a map to guide us in the sea of data if we want to get anything impactful done in a reasonable time frame. Data is overflowing more and more. Like if we try to analyze all the data without these three things, we get completely lost and we take forever and might not even get anywhere, right? And how do we use them? Well, for the storyline, we have to use our prioritization logic and the current knowledge about the problem. Your structure, remember, your structure is going to inform your storyline. And second, the ghost slides, well, you have to understand how to represent the results on a page. This vision of how the end deliverable will look like is such an important thing to have. It helps you guide yourself in the investigation. And third, the work plan help you understand, well, you have to do the analysis, and it's good to list all the analysis you have to do in order to prove a point. SEQ or SER, right, is a famous framework that consultants love a lot from the Pyramid Principle book. Well, situation, complication, question, we already said that this is part of your problem definition, and you can also use a variation with the SCR, which is could be used as a day one resolution, right? So maybe you already have a very strong hypothesis, so you give upfront like SCR and then you iterate that. Or if it's the conclusion of your presentation, you can also give the situation, complication, and resolution. Okay, everything in your answer has to be backed up by your conclusions and their supporting facts. This here is an example of a storyline draft for the diagnosis we're talking about in our problem, right? The architectural problem. Those are proto-action titles, right? We can refine them once we have more data. So you don't need to worry about being super granular in your storyline when you are starting, right? But here, lower income families in Brazil don't hire interior designers for the lack of awareness and affordability. Okay, let's repeat it there. So they don't want they don't know what interior design really is. They don't know how the service works end to end, and they don't know where to look for good providers. So the awareness problems that we spoke about in our structure. And affordability, the price of interior design projects and implementation is perceived as too high. Second, there's no credit easily available for home improvements in Brazil. And the next steps, we must explore ways to increase awareness and decrease costs and prices. As you see, this all comes together into the conclusion. And it is part of the prioritization that we did with the structure. Very important tips for your storyline. Always take the perspective of the audience. Who are you presenting to? Okay, that's very important. Second, it's simply like writing an executive summary up front. Every line, every bullet of the executive summary should correspond to a specific part of your story or page that you're going to create later on. And can't emphasize this enough, do not cherry pick arguments and ignore hidden assumptions. Okay, that's very common that people write stories and then there's a big flaw, a leap of logic in the middle, and it's all a problem because the audience can realize, and if they don't realize, if nobody realizes, this can come up later as well as a problem in the implementation and the success of this initiative. Okay, so very important. Yeah, so humans are storytelling creatures, use storytelling and storylines early on, and very important, this is a rule number 1 in McKinsey: never do analysis randomly. Only explore clear and testable hypotheses that advance your storyline, right? I will repeat that. Never do analysis randomly. Always have clarity. So, hey, Flavio, what if we know so little and we cannot even start drafting a sensible storyline? Well, you, together with the team, can probably draft a first storyline much, much better than you think for most problems. But when we are facing extreme uncertainty, the feature that is part of the most difficult problems, well, you have to understand different levels of uncertainty, right? It's a spectrum. We can have small uncertainty up to like complete uncertainty, and consider using some of those approaches that we have here, right? So you might buy time and delay your action until you know more, or buy information so you can act right now, buy hedges protecting you from adverse scenarios, buy insurance, which also does the same thing, or options, which gives you more alternatives later on, or making the famous no regret moves. Whatever scenario you go, this is always a good thing to do. And I can tell you that investing in yourself in a problem-solving skill set is likely to be a no regret move, no matter what happens in the future. Now for the goal slides, as I said, always orient yourself towards deliverable and reverse engineer them. So find the data to put on your page, put dummy charts, the way you want the data to look like, or you represent this data. This is so useful, right? First, it forces you to think about your output, to pursue it, makes you really, really look for the right data, the right way to prove or disprove your hypothesis. And this is a superpower, right? And second, it helps you align with other people, how it will look like, and people can give opinions and it's like, oh no, I think you need to also look at this data point, or this is not the best way to look at this, right? So it's very hard sometimes to create pages to prove a point. So you want to do this in teams. Each slide that you create should also be a pyramid, right? With the points that prove your action title. So think about it when you're creating the go slides, and put all the arguments that you need on it, right? To summarize and how everything connects, right? So you start with breaking down your problem in a structure. You prioritize some hypotheses that you believe are more important. Then you write your storyline draft and create your goal slides, right? It should be pyramid for the storyline, and each slide should be a pyramid too with the points. And then you can build a work plan, which can be short, but should be highly specific and focus on the initial analysis. Okay, it's very important that it has no confusion about responsibilities, who is doing what, by when, and stick to the plan. Okay, we usually recommend short sprints. In consulting, we do like 1, 2, or 3 week sprints, and then we create a new work plan. Okay, so focus on discovering new things, then you're gonna probably learn new things, iterate your storyline, and have a new work plan. But again, never do analysis without hypothesis and crystal clear deliverables. Plan those first, okay?